44-year-old Anthony Todt lived what some might class as the perfect life. Married to his high school sweetheart, 42-year-old Megan Todt. The couple had 3 children, 13-year-old Alec, 11-year-old Tyler, and 4-year-old Zoe. They also had a family dog whose name was Breezy. At the time of December 2019, the family lived in a town called Celebration. Celebration is located in Florida and was constructed from the ground up by the Walt Disney Company. It's situated close to Disney World, and the town itself does have a rather interesting history, but one that I won't be going into too much detail in on this video. The town was developed in 1996 as an experiment in community planning. This was done under the category of New Urbanism, designed with the goal to maintain a small town feel no matter how large it got. Many people looking in on the town's construction and ideologies would call it too good to be true, and they would compare it to the Stepford Wives or the Truman Show. Anthony Todt would move here with his family around 2017 from Connecticut, and he says that this move was because the warmer weather was good for his wife, who had been suffering from many health conditions, and it was the right move for his children, as there were many more creative arts and homeschooling opportunities in Celebration. Anthony and Megan had met in high school and were regarded by many as the perfect couple. Both of them shared a keen interest in the field of physical therapy, and they would attend the same university, obtaining the same credentials, Masters in Physical Therapy. The couple both worked as traveling physical therapists for most of their early careers, and would find themselves frequently traveling across state lines to work in many different locations. After some time, they would start a family, and the two didn't wish to continue to travel anymore, so they decided to open their own physical therapy practice near to where they had purchased a home in Colchester, Connecticut. When they later made the move to Florida, they would hold on to the practice, and Anthony would travel to Connecticut on Tuesdays for work, then fly back to Florida on Fridays to spend time with his family. As mentioned earlier, Megan was suffering many health problems. According to Anthony, she had been diagnosed with Lyme disease from before they had met, and this would flare up constantly whenever her health would fluctuate. He says that she had been plagued with troubles, especially since 2011, and to cover a few of what he reports was wrong, she was bitten by a bug in Disneyland, which turned into an enormous infection. Being pregnant at the time, this bug bite had triggered a miscarriage, which then led to severe depression in Megan. Following this event, the problems would pile up. Liver failure, drug-induced hepatitis, nerve dysfunction, breathing difficulties, tachycardia, joint laxity, and severe weight loss. He says that he watched his wife go from a muscular, internationally renowned yoga teacher to barely being able to hold on to 90 pounds. She lost all of her feminine features, and some days she was not even able to get out of bed. He states that looking after her was an enormous task, as she required up to 3 sessions of physical therapy each day, with every session lasting 2 to 3 hours. This he would perform in between looking after his children and traveling interstate for work. Although this was a lot of care that he needed to provide for his spouse, he claims that it did not affect his love for her, and that he loved her more than anything in the world. Despite these difficulties, the family was known by the community and loved ones to have been very happy and vibrant. The boys loved music just like their mother did, and they played a range of instruments. The family would take every opportunity they could to experience the world together. They would go on vacations and trips, and they would play in the snow. They would go to theme parks and take bike rides together, and much more. Anthony would write extensively on his Facebook page about the love that he has for his family. Here are a few quotes from it now. "Thank you for all the birthday wishes and well wishes alike. I am truly blessed to have a life that I share with my true love and soulmate Meg, and our beautiful children. I am also blessed to have friends and acquaintances like you that bring a smile to my face and a warmth in my heart. I have to say this year hit me the most thus far. May all your lives be happy and full of love." So many reasons to celebrate and be happy today. 8 years ago, this beautiful soul came into our lives and would change our life forever. Happy 8th birthday to my oldest son Alec. You make us smile every day and make us proud of the person you are. 19 years. Love you more each day. Can't wait to see what the next chapter in our lives bring. Thank you to all that shared in this day with us, and share in our days since." End quotes. Focusing the story on Anthony now. Behind this exterior of a happy, stable, and loving husband, there was an event which occurred in his early life which would scar him deeply. In 1980, when Anthony was 4 years old, on a night where his father was going to get home late, he would wake up to a scream. Climbing out of his bed to investigate, he would enter his mother's room, only to see her have a bullet fired into her head by an unknown male. Anthony's mother, Loretta, would survive the attack, but her left eye was destroyed, and the bullet forever lodged in the back of her brain. Medical personnel would say that she should be dead, and that they have no idea how she survived. The attack was thought to have been a robbery gone wrong, as drawers and cupboards were rifled through. But soon the truth emerged. Investigators would learn that Anthony's father, Robert Todt, a special education teacher, had hired 19-year-old ex-student John Chairmont, a man with learning disabilities, alongside a drug and alcohol addiction, to do the shooting. John was arrested on a separate charge a few weeks after the shooting, and whilst in custody he would confess to shooting Loretta. He says that he did so at the request of Robert Todt. Here is a quote from the state's assistant attorney, who had worked tirelessly on the case against Robert. Quote, "Robert was having an affair with a 17-year-old student at the time, and he was engaged to another woman, a young nurse in the neighbouring town. Here is a suburban schoolteacher who's fairly well respected, and who was leading not just a double and triple, but maybe even a quadruple life. As Robert and the young nurse began to solidify plans for their wedding, they had already talked to the priest in her parish and announced the engagement to her friends and family. He had begun to feel the pressure building of his multiple lives. So, he approached a former student and told him about an important assignment. Robert was a very convincing and charming sort of guy, but he was also absolutely cold and remorseless." End quote. After Robert's arrest, and all throughout the trial, Loretta would not believe that her husband was involved, and she fully supported him throughout the process, as he denied any and all involvement in the shooting. Robert would say that he had only met up with John to help the troubled man write job applications. He does admit to being engaged to the nurse, but he says he had no intention of ever marrying her, and on the night of the shooting, he had actually spent the night with another woman. When he returned home late, he found a scene that shocked him, as he witnessed neighbours tending to his injured wife and scared children. He says that he had no idea what occurred. The jury would not believe his story, and Robert Todt was found guilty of attempted homicide, criminal conspiracy, and criminal solicitation. As the verdict came down, Loretta would scream out in court that her husband had been framed. Here is a quote from Loretta at the time. "I'm not sticking up for him because he's my husband. I'm sticking up for him because he didn't do it." End quote. Robert would file several appeals that were all rejected, and he even tried for a $30 million lawsuit against police and prosecutors for what he states to be was an unlawful arrest and trial. In the year following, when Robert went to prison, Loretta would continue to live in the same home with her 2 young children. She would sleep in the very bed where remnants from the fired bullet could be seen in the headboard. During this time, it is said that Anthony would suffer from horrible nightmares, and he was haunted by images and dreams of his mother being shot. Loretta would move her young son to another room to try and help him, but this did not work. After a year, in 1981, Loretta would accept that her husband had tried to kill her, and she would move the family from Pennsylvania to Connecticut, cutting off all ties with Robert, and ensuring that he had no communication with his children. Here is what she said regarding this. "It all started to make sense. His lies, his cheating. It just got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore. I always knew there was something going on, but before, I thought it was just me." End quote. Loretta would remarry, and her new husband would take the children in as his own, Anthony would receive therapy and counselling all through school and into his adult life, and the family did their best to ensure he felt safe and loved. When asked about this event later in Anthony's life, he would say that watching his father being taken away for reasons he didn't understand, and coming to terms with the horrific images of his mother's wounded body having been caused by his father's actions, had left a lot of unhealed wounds for him. As this scarred young boy grows into an adult, raising a family of his own and achieving success in the medical field, unfortunately, there would be more problems under the surface of an otherwise perfect-looking life. With his physical therapy business, Anthony had been billing insurance companies for physical therapies that he had never performed. The practice was being investigated by the FBI since April of 2019, and in November of 2019, the practice would be raided. At this time, Anthony admitted to the investigators that he had falsely billed Medicaid and was using the stolen money to pay off short-term loans. He said that he would randomly choose patients to bill their insurance for extra claims, and that no one else in his practice knew he was doing this, not even his wife. Many interviews were conducted with some of his patients regarding these false billings. Here is an excerpt from one. Quote, "My children attended sessions at the office many times, and they generally went twice a week. Each session lasted about 30 minutes. The practice was a mess due to a high turnover rate, and sometimes the children would see therapists who didn't know how to treat them because they couldn't access their patient records." End quote. In 2018, the practice no longer had a pediatric specialist available, so the patient that I quoted before took her children elsewhere, and she said that it took 4 months for Anthony to send the patient records to the new office. When asked about the delay, Anthony replied, "I've been busy, I'll get to it." When the records finally arrived, authorities said that both children had identical files, even though they had different conditions that required different treatment. The mother said she also discovered that the practice often billed Medicaid for appointments 3 to 5 times a week, even though they never went to the office more than twice in the same week. And it was later discovered that Anthony fraudulently billed insurance for 163 appointments for one of her children, and 175 appointments for the second child, appointments that they never attended. Further investigation would reveal that Anthony had taken out loans from over 20 different lenders, and his license to practice physical therapy in both Florida and Connecticut had expired, Florida in 2007, and Connecticut in September of 2019. When asked by investigators if he was living above his means, he would answer that that is the best way to put it. The investigators advise Anthony to get a lawyer and to stay in touch with them as they further investigate. During this time, in November, employees of the practice stop getting paid, so they stop showing up to work, and the office closes. Anthony avoids multiple meetings with the agents that he promised he would attend, and he was facing up to $377,000 in fines. In addition to this, in November of 2019, he is also hit with an eviction notice on his home for not paying rent. I found it unclear to what extent his wife knew of these financial troubles, if at all. Anthony claims that she was fully aware of the investigation, and to line up with this somewhat, his sister knew of it as well. I imagine if his sister knew, then surely his wife would have. But as I mentioned, to what extent, I don't know. It's unclear even if she knew that they were being evicted from the rental home that they were living in. But moving on from that thought, this leads us into the December of 2019. A few weeks before Christmas, Anthony had told his wife's aunt, a woman named Kopko, and a person who was very close to the family, not to worry if she didn't hear from them for a little bit, as they were planning to go on vacation and wouldn't be reachable as they were going off grid. He says that all of their phones would be off. The plan told to this auntie was that the family would end up in St. Augustine, so that the two boys, Alec and Tyler, could write a paper on the historic city. For months, Anthony's wife Megan had been talking about a trip like this to her aunt, so to learn that they were doing it did not come as a surprise. Right before Christmas, Kopko receives a text from Megan's phone, saying that the entire family is feeling ill, but they're still making the trip to St. Augustine. Quote, "We're just gonna wait until we're over this, and then we're gonna head out." End quote. A few days pass, and the family was meant to have arrived in northern Florida, but they never made contact with Kopko. Anthony would eventually text her and say that Megan had lost her phone and that he was the only one who was contactable in the family. Kopko says that nothing seemed out of the ordinary, not until she didn't hear from them on Christmas Day. This made her worry, as she would always talk with the family and the children on Christmas Day. Kopko isn't the only one getting concerned either, as Anthony's sister Chrissy also senses something might be wrong, as her brother isn't responsive like he usually is via texts and phone calls. Seeing as these two family members do not live in Florida, their main form of communication with Megan, Anthony and the children is via cellular communications, video chats, phone calls and texts, something that they would do with them frequently. Now it was strange that they had found it impossible to contact any of them, except for Anthony. Anthony is responding to messages, but when he does, he tells his sister Chrissy that the family is still very ill and are generally sleeping or resting and cannot talk. His sister becomes worried that something is going on. She's confused and frustrated, especially because she knows no one in Florida who can go and check on them. So she contacts Celebration local authorities on December 29th, 2019, and she asks them to do a wellness check.
Okay, and how can we help you?
I'm wondering if somebody can do a wellness check on my brother and his family. They've been really sick for probably like the past week and a half, and I can't seem to get a hold of them.
When was the last time you heard from them, ma'am?
The last time I physically talked to him was on, last time I physically talked to him was either Monday or Tuesday. They're supposed to call us between yesterday and today, and we haven't been able to get a hold of him. I can't get a hold of him, my sister-in-law, or even my nephew.
And what are their names?
My brother's name is Tony. My sister-in-law's name is Megan. And then their three kids are Alex.
What is the last name for
Tyler.
Tony?
Oh, I'm sorry, Todt. T-O-D as in David, T as in Tom.
Okay, do you have a cell phone number or phone number for him?
I do. He's not, his phone, I think it's turned off.
Okay, and who else lives there in the house?
It's my two nephews and my niece. Alec, A-L-E-K, is 13. Tyler, T-Y-L-E-R, he is 10. And my niece, Zoe, is 4.5.
You said they were sick or something like that you mentioned at the beginning?
Yeah, they've been really sick. I guess they've had the flu. But they've had the flu probably for a couple weeks. They were really down and out during Christmas. The only one we've been able to talk to is my brother. And now, like I said, we can't get hold of any of them. And he was supposed to call us. He was supposed to check in with us yesterday, and then he was, because they were doing their Christmas yesterday, supposedly, and then he was supposed to call us today. And none of my sisters or my mother has heard from him, and we can't get a hold of him.
Okay. All right, we're going to have somebody come over. Then when the deputies get there, they're going to call you from the block of private number to let you know the outcome, okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
It is my pleasure. Have a good night, ma'am.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
An officer is dispatched, and he walks around the outside of the home. He finds no vehicles parked in the driveway or outside. All of the blinds are closed, and there are no signs of anybody in the house. He knocks a number of times on the front door, and upon receiving no signs that anybody is inside, and nothing suspicious to note, he leaves a card in the door with his details, asking for the residents of the home to contact him when they can. More days pass with no word from Anthony, and his sister becomes increasingly worried. Chrissy says that she knew about the federal investigation into her brother's Medicaid fraud scheme, and she also knew that he was facing huge fines and jail time. When she stopped hearing from his wife and kids for several weeks, and her contact with Anthony became sporadic, she thought that possibly the family might be making a run for it to evade legal consequences. January 6th is the last communication she has with Anthony, and because she is unable to get a response from him, a desperate online search begins. A Facebook page for the missing family is made, and on it, a family member writes, "Hi, we are seeking information on their last communications to others. Please let us know the last time you've heard from the Todts, Tony, Megan, and the kids. At this time, we are seeking information. Please do not message the family asking for details, as it is a sensitive matter, and we are just looking for information. If you haven't heard from them, or don't even know them, please help us by sharing the page. Anthony's sister writes on it, "This is a very personal post, but we are asking for your help. Please let me know the last time you have spoken to, texted, or messaged my brother Tony, Meg, or the kids. In due time we can explain, but right now we are looking for them and are worried." A woman from the Todts neighborhood responds, "Hello, I recognize them from living right around the corner. I'd say the last time I saw them was around Thanksgiving time, and they were all walking the dog as a family. I thought that they just went away for the holidays, because their blinds are all closed, and they still have their decorative pumpkins out in the yard. The wife seemed to be a very nice lady, and they appeared to be a very nice family." Another resident of the area says, "Tony and I coached our kids in soccer a couple of seasons ago. Alec, Tyler, and my daughter always play soccer and basketball together outside in our alley. They recently moved across the street from us. I saw them outside maybe a couple of weeks ago. Love them all. So worried about them. Anything we can do, please let me know." Earlier in December, one of the extended family members had received a strange text message from Megan's phone number, and after discussing this message with Anthony's sister, Chrissy, they become so concerned that on January 10th, 2020, Chrissy calls 911 once again. In this phone call, you may notice that a segment of audio has been redacted. This is because the Todt fraud case was not allowed to be brought up during the trial, and it is mentioned on the phone here.
Hi, I don't know who I need to speak with. I'm curious if I can have a wellness check done. I had actually called on December 29th, and I had an officer go out because I was concerned. My brother and his family, they had all been sick, but there's actually been more developments. There's actually an active, and I just in conversations with my sister, my sister-in-law was making a comment about, and we just kind of put it all together about basically the world ending on the 28th, and nobody has talked to them. Nobody physically talked to my sister-in-law since the 26th of December, and my brother has stopped texting as of Monday. So I don't know if there's a way that somebody can go out. They are renting a place. They're actually being evicted from that property. But that's the last place that we know that they were supposedly at. So they think the world is ending and you're worried they're going to because of a lot of stuff that's been happening, that there could be something a little bit more happening. And he has stopped all communications. And we have not spoken to Megan. Nobody's heard from Megan. He said since Monday, that was the 6th. The last time anybody talked to my brother, text my brother, not even talking, text my brother was on the 6th. It's just really strange. Yeah.
Officers are dispatched once more to the residence on January 13th. As they arrive at the location, they see a man standing on the porch of the house. They approach, and he rushes inside quickly, closing the door behind him. After knocking for several minutes and trying to make contact, the officers enter the property.
After you opened the door to the residence, what, if anything, did you notice?
The same thing that we had seen from outside. All the lights were off, and noticed a really foul odor right upon opening the door. Approximately 5 other law enforcement officers, I believe, entered the residence with me.
When we entered the front door, it appeared that there was no power to the residence. It was dark inside the house, no lights were on. The air was kind of stale, and it had a strong foul smell.
And during your career, have you become aware of what that foul smell indicates to you?
Yes, ma'am.
What does it mean?
I've investigated incidences where there's been dead bodies in residences, and that foul smell is consistent with a dead body.
We had called him out and looked for him in the first couple of rooms upon entering, and then when we got to a larger open area of the residence, there's a stairwell that leads up to the second floor. and the defendant was at the top of the stairs, maybe 2 stairs away from reaching the second floor.
Once Mr. Todt came down to the bottom of the stairwell, maybe a minute or two of some conversation, then I made my way up the stairwell.
What was that conversation consistent of?
I asked Mr. Todt if his wife was at the house. He stated that she was upstairs sleeping. I asked, I believe, if there was any children in the residence. His statement was somewhere along the lines, I'm not sure if they're at a friend's house sleeping over.
Did you go upstairs?
Yes, ma'am, we did. So as we walked up to the top of the stairs, kind of off to the right, was the master bedroom. The door was partially, I'd say about halfway open. I could see inside of the door, I could see the bed, and there was a silhouette of a person that was laying on the bed, but they were fully covered up with blankets. When we entered the bedroom, pushed the door all the way open. It was a fairly large master bedroom. On the floor were 2 mattresses that were side by side. Also, there was a body on one mattress, a body on the other mattress. They were also covered with blankets.
The bodies were discolored black and blue. They were sitting, there were 2 boys sitting on top of I believe a mattress on the floor. It almost looked like their feet or some of their flesh may have been falling off of the body or decomposing at that point. When we went into the bedroom, what looked like the 2 boys on the floor were very obviously seen right when you walked in, as well as what appeared to be Megan in the bed. But we could not identify where his daughter was. And we had known that there were 3 children that we were, or that were expected to be at the residence. So we asked where the location of his daughter was.
What did the defendant say?
He said something regarding her being asleep, and he may have referenced being at a sleepover. I can't recall the exact wording, I'm sorry.
At the foot of the bed, there was a pile of blankets that were piled up. We started kind of peeling the blankets apart, and that's where we located the juvenile female. In the master bedroom, there was the adult female on the bed, the juvenile female on the bed, and then 2 juvenile males on the floor.
A safety check of the home was conducted where deputies discovered 4 deceased individuals inside. The home was immediately secured and a search warrant was obtained by our detectives. Anthony has cooperated with the investigation and he has confessed to killing his wife Megan Todt, 42 years of age, whose date of birth is January 28, 1977, and their 3 children. Alec Todt, 13 years of age, born September 26, 2006. Tyler Todt, 11 years of age, born December 30th, 2008. And Zoe Todt, who is 4 years of age, born July 23rd, 2015. Anthony also killed their family dog, Breezy. Anthony has been arrested on a warrant obtained by our detectives today for multiple counts of homicide and 1 count of felony animal cruelty.
So Alex, he was the 13-year-old boy, and he too was in a state of decomposition. Given the state of decomposition, it just made it a little bit more challenging to examine the wounds that he had. Alex had a single stab wound on the abdomen. His head is up here. You could see all the skin discoloration, skin slip. There's some maggots. Here, further down here on the abdomen is where the stab wound was. So the wound on Alex probed at least 4.5 inches deep into the abdominal cavity. It sliced through his left 8th rib on the front of his chest. But other than that, it did not hit any vital organs, didn't hit the bowel, and there was no hemorrhage inside his abdominal cavity. if I don't see any evidence of blood or hemorrhage, to me, it shows that this stab wound was inflicted pretty much post-mortem after he was already deceased. Tyler was the 11-year-old boy, and he too, along with the siblings, was in a state of decomposition. So we can see his head up here. He's markedly discolored. Here on his abdominal region, maybe a little bit hard to appreciate, but he does have like several segments of his intestines that are outside of the body due to decomposition coming out of a single stab wound. He did have a defect or a cut wound from the knife in the large intestine, but there was no evidence of any blood or hemorrhage inside the abdominal cavity. Megan Todt was a 42-year-old mother. She too was in a state of decomposition. She too had injury to her abdomen. There were 2 stab wounds. Both of the stab wounds went at least 8 inches deep into the abdominal cavity.
Did you find evidence of hemorrhage?
Actually, on Megan, I did. Inside the abdominal cavity, there was approximately 100 to 200 milliliters of like clotted blood in the soft tissue. So given the state of decomposition and the fact that she actually has some hemorrhage, to me, that indicates that she sustained those injuries antemortem when she was alive.
Absent the other circumstances surrounding Megan's death, would these 2 stab wounds have been fatal?
No. Zoe, along with the other 3 members of her family, she was decomposed. She was a little bit more decomposed than the rest of the family members. I noticed that more than her mother and her 2 brothers, she was wrapped with more blankets and kind of swaddled a little bit more, so that would have pretty much held in the heat of her body as she was decomposing more. I noticed that like the flesh between her ribs, everything almost seemed like, I hate to say that, it was kind of like melting off the bone. It's just, she was just really starting to go, really decompose. But I was able to see that at least on the outside of her body, she did not have any evidence of injury. Unfortunately for Zoe and also the other members of her family, because of the state of decomposition, there was no blood available to test. So we asked the laboratory what specimens that they prefer, that think would be most accurate to determine, get drug results. So they recommended we take samples of the liver and the brain, and if there was any chest fluid, which is pretty much like decomposition fluid in the body, to go ahead and submit that as well.
All of the drug tests that I personally performed, as well as those that I have oversight of now, involve testing for diphenhydramine, or commonly known as Benadryl. So at the university, we've worked over 60,000 cases for state medical examiners, and nearly every single one of those cases would include screening for diphenhydramine.
The levels of diphenhydramine that you observed in the results for Zoe, do you believe that that level would have affected Zoe's ability to defend herself?
It's very likely, yes.
Same question for Alec.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
And Tyler?
Yes.
What about Megan?
Yes.
Based on the autopsy and with the degree of decomposition and discoloration of her skin, no, I was not able to determine that she had been smothered. The cause of death was homicidal violence of unspecified means in association with diphenhydramine toxicity. And diphenhydramine is another name for Benadryl. Cause of death for Alex was homicidal violence of unspecified means in association with a diphenhydramine toxicity. Cause of death for Megan was homicidal violence of unspecified means in association with diphenhydramine toxicity.
Were you able to form an opinion as to the cause of death for Tyler?
Yes.
What was it?
The cause of death was homicidal violence of unspecified means in association with diphenhydramine toxicity.
Traditionally, the postmortem examination of the animal was called a necropsy, but with the One Health initiative, with the relationship between animals, humans, and the environment, we're arguing about this, but autopsy is a preferred term by a number of pathologists these days. So this was a small breed dog. It was approximately 10 pounds, 4.2 kilograms. We use the metric system for weights. It was a black and white dog, small, had a sort of short curly hair, fur on its body, and it was a female dog.
What was the condition of the dog?
The dog that I received was partially frozen when I received it, but it was severely decomposed. So not the way we normally would see a dog. On the right side of the thorax, so the chest of the dog, there was a hole. It was approximately 1 centimeter in diameter that it required further examination.
Did it appear that at first it might have been some type of wound that was inflicted?
Yes, it could have been.
The medical examiner places the time of death for all members of the family around mid-December, which means that Anthony had been living in the house, sleeping in the room with his deceased family for over 3 weeks. The confession mentioned earlier that was obtained by law enforcement had occurred on January 15th, 2 days after Anthony's arrest, during a police interview.
How do you feel right now?
Regarding health-wise?
Yeah, I mean,
I feel very sad and very upset that I'm still here and
yeah. Is there somewhere else you'd rather be?
with my family on the other side.
On the other side?
Mhm.
Okay. And you do know your wife and children are deceased?
Yes, and that's where I want to be with them.
That's where you want to be? Okay. Just to clear my mind and go through everything, I'd like you to just start from the beginning, if we can. How we led up to where we're at right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. For a while, my wife had started. She began watching these videos, talking about the afterlife, talking about somebody that shipped out, talking about how families go to so.
Slow down a little bit right now. I'm just having a hard time keeping up with you too.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. And speak up.
And watching these videos and watching everything going on, she presented them to me, and I started watching them with kind of a uneasy, like, yeah, whatever. And the more and more we watched, the more and more I gained an understanding that there is more than this life here,
Mm-hmm.
a higher level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started researching, and then we started finding more about the world is coming to the end, the apocalyptic end, and that a family is going to be separated and enslaved, and to avoid this, to all go together. Okay?
You mean die together?
Die together, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay? So, because my wife's been chronically ill for a while, this really appealed to her, and because it appealed to me also, because she wouldn't be in any pain, family wouldn't be separated,
Mm-hmm.
there would be no more sorrow, no more heartbreaking, no more anything, it would be a salvation and everlasting life. We had sat down and talked with the boys and Zoe just on different things about, death and the way what would happen if mommy died, how would you feel, what happened when daddy died, what would you feel? And the consistent responses was that we don't want you to die, we want to die with you. They didn't want to live without us. Okay? We didn't point blank say we're going to die and leave you behind, but what would you do if mommy and daddy died and we don't want to live without you, we don't want to live without you.
Okay.
And in conversation with my wife, we didn't want to live without them either. We wanted to bring the whole family together and make it transverse together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So we kept thinking, talking, and just researching different things. And finally, we started researching. We said, we're just going to have to do some sort of exsanguination. Okay? Bleed to death. Okay? That's how they used to do it way in the back, when they used to do sacrificial things.
You take a plead to death?
Bleed to death.
Oh, bleed to death, sorry. Okay.
That's okay. Okay? And then, so we started researching where would be the easiest to stab, to do, whatnot, so the kids could bleed to death.
Let's go to the day of their death. How did this go down?
Woke up at 11:30 at night. We set the alarm for 11:30 at night, and got up out of bed. And it was to do Zoe first.
Okay.
Zoe was upstairs in her room.
Okay.
Alec was upstairs in his room. Tyler was asleep downstairs in the library room.
And why again was he down there?
The two of them were sick, so we kept them apart.
Okay.
We walked to the door, Zoe's door. Meg and I hugged and kissed, and pretty much we know what we need to do. Come back at me when we're done. So I went in Zoe's room, and it took me 2 or 3 hours sitting there because it's a tough. But the everlasting salvation and the thought of that everlasting salvation was there, and I needed to save her soul, wanted her to be with us. Megan kept coming in. What's going on? I'm like, it'll be done in a little bit. It'll be done in a little bit. It's getting past that. I'm not that guy, you know. The initial thought was to stab into the umbilicus above the navel. I know I tried. I don't know if I ever punctured it. I don't know if I did or not. I saw a little mark on her, but I don't know if I saw anything. But then she rolled and started squiggling, and I put my hand over her mouth and then put a pillow over top of her. So she went, and then she started to fade away. And I just held that until there was no motion left. I did lay on her when she lay on her belly. I'm sorry, I laid on her to keep her down, and I put the pillow on top.
Okay. So how long from the time that you had the knife out to the suffocation until you think that she was deceased?
I want to say 10 minutes, 15 minutes, right around there. It seemed like that night took forever, so it's hard to really gauge on the time.
Okay. And you said you used a pillow over her head?
Yes.
So for 10 minutes to 15 minutes, you held a pillow over your daughter's head?
Mm-hmm.
How long did she kick and scream?
Only for a couple of minutes.
A couple minutes?
Mm-hmm. And I just held it there.
That's a long time.
Yes, it is.
Did the other children hear her?
No.
Did your wife hear her?
My wife kept going up. I felt her in the opening the door to see what was going on and shutting the door and walking back.
Okay.
We go into Alex's room.
Alex's room?
Yes. The one next to the bathroom, the one upstairs.
Well, upstairs. Okay.
Yeah. And beforehand, we had talked about the aspect of she's got to hold his feet down, and I'll do the stab.
How old's Alec?
13.
Okay, so he's the oldest.
We walk in. He's on his back. She's just sitting there holding his feet together. We're just in there, just eyeing each other, just gaining the confidence, I guess, you know. And I go to, I stab him, and he started kicking, was trying to get up, and he kept rolling. So I ended up putting there was a pillow there, I ended up putting a pillow in the back of his head so he wouldn't hit me with the back of his head. And then I reached around with my hand and held his nose in his mouth. And he kept rolling and kicking and rolling and kicking, and then it eventually stopped.
Where was Megan at?
Megan left midway through there and went back to the room.
Okay, so Alec is gone. What happens after that?
I walk into the room, Megan and I console ourselves, and she turned to me, she goes, we have to finish this, there's one more left, let's go, before the sunlight comes up. My Tyler is the strongest kid, and my Tyler is the quickest kid. And if he got out of the room by chance, you know, it wouldn't help the situation.
Why not?
Because we wouldn't be able to catch him, hence we wouldn't be able to all go together. And Megan stood outside the door, just in case, so the door couldn't open.
Mm-hmm.
And I had gone in, and he was laying on his laying parallel. He was laying on his left side, and I was able to get in and get the knife right in there, I got it. It started bleeding quite a bit, but then being strong, he kept moving. So then again, I put a pillow on top of my hand, and he went really, really, really quick.
So a lot of blood.
I didn't see much blood because I had it covered up, like how much blood came out. I could feel the blood coming out because it was all over my hand, but it was blood, yes.
So they're all deceased. What do you guys do?
Go up to the bedroom. Just started talking. There was some discussion of me going first and her staying last. Her going first. She wasn't sure which one she wanted to do. So we decided that the dog we wanted the dog with us.
Mm-hmm.
So she held the backside of the dog down, and I put the I call them Mexican blankets. They're like these blankets around, and then I was able to hold the knot in her snout and her nose closed, and she went peacefully. Picked her up, put her in her bed, and then Meg was like, I want to go next, I want to be done, and then whatnot.
So you just suffocated the dog?
Yeah.
So the dog's dead? Mm-hmm. Now what happens?
Meg wanted to go. Gave her the knife. I laid next to her, and she put the knife into her stomach. Okay. And I said, did you get the spot? It's right here. She said, yeah, I feel it. Okay. We're laying there for 45 minutes. It's supposed to take about 10 minutes, what everybody says. After she stabbed herself, she says, I feel nothing happening. I said, okay, this is good. What do you want to do? She said, do we have any Benadryl? I said, we have liquid Benadryl. She goes, let me have that. Let me try some of that. Maybe that'll put me to sleep or let me go sooner.
Mm-hmm.
So she was drinking liquid Benadryl. And I was checking back on her, give her some peace. Walked around, came back, came back. And at one point I thought she had passed from doing the Benadryl. When I came up, I was like, Meg? She was like, I'm here. I said, okay. And so I said, what do you want to do? You want to try more Benadryl? Do you want the knife back again? What do you want to do? And she goes, let me try some more Benadryl. And then if not, we'll do a second stab. Okay. Gave her a bunch more Benadryl. Like I said, let that settle in for a while. There was a big bottle, like a family-sized Benadryl thing.
She killed the whole bottle?
In 2 different sippings, yes.
Oh, okay.
And that wasn't happening, so she decided to go through her liver. Okay, I pulled up the thing and the hepatic liver, we laid it out on where it was in her skin, according to landmarks. And I said, it's right in this area. So, okay. Then she, with 2 hands, pushed in. And you heard like a little click, as if it went through something. Okay, so I was like, okay, sounds like it went through the liver, that's good, okay. She pulled it out, she put the knife right next to her, and I just laid with her. And I laid there and held her, and we just waited. It seemed like hours went by and nothing else happening. I got up, I wanted to check on our boys and our little one to make sure everything was going okay in the house, everything was okay. Came back and she's sitting up at the edge of the bed. And she's cleaning the wound. I'm like,
what was she cleaning it with?
It was one of my t-shirts. She had, I think she had a towel at one point. And she was like, this has got to be done. This is even too long. This is ridiculous. I'm like, shall we go on, look at different other aspects to do this? How do you want to do this? She goes, I want this ended now. I said, okay, what does that mean? She goes, I want you to take the pillowcase, put a pillow, and put it over my head. I said, I don't know if I can do that. And she looked at me, she goes, if you love me, you can do this. I want to be with my babies. I said, and she just looked at me and she goes, you're strong enough, you can do it. Okay.
I'm unsure if a portion of interview has been redacted, or the detective skimmed over it by mistake, but the exact details, with Anthony describing the suffocation of his wife using a grey pillow, are not present in this video. It leaves as you saw, with him saying that Megan was pleading with him to suffocate her. The detective then takes him down another path of side questioning, and where it picks back up again, Anthony is describing that it was his turn to die, now that the rest of his family, including Megan, were gone. So the interview goes on, and Anthony talks about how Megan had asked him that he wait a day or two before he killed himself. This way he could ensure that the children were definitely dead and everything was in order. He describes how he tried to kill himself in many different ways. Multiple attempts of Benadryl overdose. He says he tried to hang himself. He tried to shoot himself in the liver and the heart using a pellet gun. He tried a razor blade to the radial artery, but it didn't work because he didn't do it in a bathtub. He put a zip tie around his neck, but all that did was irritate his skin as he couldn't get enough compression. He tied towels around pressure points on carotid arteries. He tried to set up a hanging system over the edge of the bed. He attempted to order arsenic suicide pills online, but they kept getting caught in customs. He tried to position himself to fall on a knife so that it would stab his diaphragm. All of this is using his own words, including the fact that he says he chickened out when it came to stabbing himself. Anthony then describes in detail how he positioned all of the bodies in the master bedroom and gathered important belongings for each family member to place beside them. He talks to the detective about how he slept in the same room as them, and how he constantly checked the mail, brought deliveries inside, and all round maintained the property so that nothing looked suspicious from the outside. He says he was living day by day with the hope that he'd be able to kill himself soon and join his family in the afterlife. He describes how his health deteriorated over that period, and he hallucinated multiple times, thinking that he was, at times, talking to people who weren't there. He says that his urine turned brown, and that he was seeing red and green dots of light in his room. The detective near the end puts up a bit of a confrontation, with some questions such as, why would Megan tell family members that she would be coming up to see them around Christmas time if she had no intention of doing that months in advance? And, were the children really that understanding, with their parents coming to them and talking about death and passing to the other side? Did two teenage boys really agree to be killed? Furthermore, he says to Anthony that he can't wrap his head around the fact that everything was so well planned, yet when it came to Megan's turn to die, or even his own, it seemed so messy and unplanned. The detective pries around the discrepancies of how the children and the dog died, as Anthony's story here doesn't line up with what was found in autopsy. A portion of this interview, which I personally found to be rather interesting, was a mention of a note that Anthony alleges both he and Megan wrote together. This note was written to explain their actions to the world, and it reads, "As 2019 comes to a close, and 2020 commencing, we as a family decided this course of action of salvation for several reasons. We are seeing the end of world prophecy coming true, and choose not to have our family suffer and be subjected to foreseen tortures, cataclysmic demise, and continued agony. We will no longer be separated. Tony will be with us always and forever now. Megan will no longer be subjected to constant daily pain, torture of living and breathing from her progressive liver and Lyme disease complications. We believe we made the right decision for our family to gain salvation and togetherness forever. The continued increasing depression as a result of Al Ghula's suicide anniversary, coupled with the agony of the miscarriage of Connor Michael recently and Avery 8 years ago, has just fueled the overall depression our whole family suffers on a daily basis. In conversation with the kids constantly, the focus of everlasting salvation and being together forever without pain and suffering is our ultimate goal and want. In addition, this family lives in daily constant fear of Robert. We are very proud of what we contributed to this world, what our children have contributed, and the love we share for each other. Our one final wish is that we are kept together. Please distribute our ashes along with our fur baby Breezy in either the ocean or at Harkness, so that we may be with Dad in eternal rest. We have prayed and we have meditated to this decision. Please continue to pray for our salvation, and please be in peace that we are no longer suffering. We are sorry for the anguish and sorrow this has caused you, but it was a decision we made as a family. Now we will be together forever without pain and suffering, and we will watch over and protect all of you. We love you all." Anthony Todt is charged with the first-degree murders of his family, and another charge of animal cruelty for the death of the family dog. During his trial, he would be the only witness to take the stand in his defense, and when he does, he has an entirely different story to the one that he confessed to during police interview. Anthony says that it was all his wife Megan who killed the children, and that he had come home one morning to find this grisly scene. He says that after finding his family dead, he lost all will to live as his mind collapsed under the pressure of the loss, and he was in a constant state of confusion and drug-induced hallucinations brought on by multiple attempts to poison himself. Anthony states that he entered the recorded police interview with a not sound mind, and although he can't remember even being there, he believes that he took the blame that day as a way to protect his wife and her legacy. As his testimony begins, a lot of time would be spent talking about how he met Megan and the excruciating details of the health problems that she faced.
She couldn't keep weight on. She couldn't breathe. Her heart rate progressively was going crazy. At rest, it would be 190 or above. EKGs, all that kind of stuff, saw her throwing atrial fibrillations, PVCs, which are, it's basically your heart operates in a synchronous motion, okay? Valves pump on rhythm. Her valves and her, sorry, not valves, her chambers were beating all irregular. It was basically, you take four wheels of a car.
Objection, Your Honor, lack of medical knowledge and narrative.
It's the narrative system.
Mr. Todt, have you, what medical training have you received in conjunction with the physical therapy?
I appreciate you asking that, sir. 20 years of medical experience working in a hospital, case review of charts, home care, meaning that not only was I operating under a nurse or with a nurse individually at a house, I was also opening cases on my own, which means I received medical information, medical records from the doctors and from the hospital themselves to be interpreted, to be reviewed, and to be deciphered so that I can properly give the appropriate care within their medical limits to the patient.
Thank you for that background.
When the Lyme disease became apparent and positive, she had breathing problems, heart rate problems, chronic pains. When she had what was called exacerbations, so without getting too technical, your immune system is the best thing to keep any disease at bay. So whenever she didn't feel well, got sick, the Lyme would become more prevalent. So when the Lyme became more prevalent, not only did she have joint aches, she had feelings of hopelessness, depression, not wanting to go on certain days. There were some days where I helped her shave her legs because she couldn't bend over, she was in so much pain or couldn't breathe. Before she got sick, we were blessed with two wonderful boys. Okay? She went from a mom who provided for everything, including myself. I consider myself a third kid, okay? To a person who could barely walk stairs on certain days. In the fall of 2019, September actually, we were blessed. We found out that a simple weekend away, we conceived. And she went from being depressed to very happy, dancing, singing, something that I hadn't seen in forever. And we lost a baby. And it affected her big time. And obviously affected me, but she went from that singing, humming, dancing person to to days that she didn't even get out of bed.
In addition to talking about his wife's medical troubles and how they impacted her life, he would also talk extensively about her religious and spiritual beliefs.
Did Megan seek other religious experiences?
Most definitely, sir.
And what was the reason for that?
When she got sick, we're under the model of traditional med. That's where we were trained. Medicine helps. Progression of her disease process, we went more alternative, or she went more alternative, I should say, because we were told to stay away from medications. Alternatives were not working. Through her yoga practice and her yoga certification, she got introduced to, I guess you want to say, an Eastern religion, Hindu and based. I always thought it was Buddhist, but it was actually Hindu. And she shied away from the Roman Catholic Church. And her progression, her religion, through that religion and her following, also took over her medical outlook and her medical treatment of herself as she shied away from unsuccessful medical interventions. She went from traditional medicine, she went to religious following of dictating what her healthcare was. She even followed a book from a guy who listened to a ghost who had no medical experience to tell her what she should be doing, what she should be eating, and that kind of stuff, called the medical medium.
Was there an afterlife component of this religious practice?
Yes, there was an afterlife component in which each afterlife, she believed that there was reincarnation. And as they burned the family karma in the current life, they reached a salvation in which they were reincarnated to a better life. I was very supportive of my wife. I did not understand, nor did I follow this religious aspect. I was Roman Catholic. The way I was raised in a military family. My stepfather was a very proud military man. I was taught respect.
Unresponsive.
The defense attorney eventually brings the questioning toward the typed note that detectives had found in his home, the one that I had read earlier, which describes the reasoning behind why the family was to die. Anthony says that when he got home the morning that he found his children's bodies, his wife had actually shown him the note, as she tried to convince him that the best course of action was for the entire family to die.
When I came back to the house that day, she showed it to me, yes. But I had no knowledge of it before I came home that day.
And what was her demeanor or attitude at that time?
She was trying to explain to me what she did. Trying to make me understand. It was the whole aspect of it was she was trying to present this as fact. And I was telling her, I don't believe that, I can't believe I called her some names, which I never called her before in my life. But the whole demeanor of it was, this is what I've been told through my meditations. This is what I believe. This is what, as she referred to as, the light has provided for her, and the light. My house was very quiet. Very unnormal having 3 kids. One 13, one 10 at the time, the other one 4 years old. She brought me in the room. I had been feeling nauseous that morning anyways, because I had these shakes I was taking for weight loss, all that. And around the same time that she was telling me I was puking. It was then that I understood what had transpired. She had blood on her shirt. And after that, after I said a few uncolored words to her, I then discovered the kids. I went into the rooms and found them dead. It was the most horrible day of my life. And what made me more horrible is my wife died in front of me also.
Following this section of testimony, Anthony's attorney would ask about the recorded police interview and the confession. He inquires what the reason might be that Anthony had confessed to these murders when he didn't do them.
I don't even remember that day. Last thing I remember was falling down the stairs and smacking my head on the stairs, which resulted in a fracture on my neck. Next thing I knew, I woke up here. And seeing that video yesterday, that was the first time I saw that video. I had no agenda consciously, but I can tell you throughout my relationship with my wife, especially after she got sick, I would put myself as a forefront and take responsibility and protect my wife. I had no clue had my kids died.
Did you have ideas of joining your family in the afterlife?
After I saw everybody die, after I saw my wife die and saw my kids, most definitely. I wanted to be with them. That's the only thing I wanted to be. I didn't care by what means. I didn't care by what anything. I sliced my wrist. I took multiple doses of Benadryl. I tried to hang myself several times. I bought a pellet gun to shoot myself because I couldn't get a gun to, as you call it, eat a gun. I saw my wife stab herself. How hard could it be to stab yourself? You gotta be freaking kidding me. You see a knife with a blade like this and you want to instill that into your body? No way. I chickened out, yes. I tried other means. I tried at least 3 episodes of Benadryl. Benadryl, as you know, can make you sleepy, okay? The first time I took it, I didn't know what I was doing. I had no plan of this. I just wanted to be with my family. I woke up, I don't know when, how long. Obviously, I didn't take enough. Next time, I took a whole bunch of, the wall dry. I remember that distinctly because that stuff tastes horribly. But the children's, which is no different, it's just a better flavor. I took, I think it was equivalent of 5 glasses about this tall I had prepared, okay? I fell asleep before I finished it entirely. The last thing of Benadryl, which I took when going back and looking at the dates and whatever, it turned out the day before that they came to my house. I saw the aspect of the 12th on one of the phones. At that time, I took over 200 pills of Benadryl. Now, mind you, a normal dose of Benadryl is 2 pills. And I took 2 family-size liquid Benadryls. In order to stay awake, and also because I was feeling nauseous, I took a Mountain Dew and an energy drink. The energy drink to keep me up because I kept falling asleep, and the Mountain Dew so that I wouldn't throw this stuff up. I wanted this stuff in my system. I was so frustrated I couldn't kill myself. I didn't even see this coming. They say, blindsided. This was a blindside by like a Mack truck filled with dynamite. Sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Collect yourself.
You have a tissue or something. I'm sorry. Deputies? Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Do you mind if I turn around real quick? Can I turn around? Sorry.
Mr. Todt, did you kill your family?
No.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Wesley.
As to be expected, the cross-examination for Anthony Todt would be intense. Anthony clashes head-on with the state's prosecutor, pretty much from the get-go. I'll play a few minutes from the very start of the cross to provide an understanding of the dynamic between these two individuals.
Ms. Pennell, cross-examination.
Yes. In December of 2019, what was Megan's medical conditions?
Megan's medical conditions consisted of neck pain, back pain, hypothyroidism, Lyme disease, heart rate issues, breathing issues.
And did all of these medical issues make her frail?
Frail is a very subjective term. Can you please be more descriptive? Please?
Did all of Megan's medical conditions make it hard for her to engage in everyday living?
Yes.
Did Megan's medical condition make it hard for her to walk?
At times, yes, but she hit it very well.
So going back to the date that you remember coming home to your family being gone, how was Megan walking that day?
She was walking fine. She had woken up pain-free the day before because she had told me that the light had interceded and the light had enabled her to do so.
Okay, so she was walking around fine.
Correct.
Okay. And did she complain to you at all about, you said she was pain-free, so she didn't have to take any medication?
She was on a whole list of herbal stuff, some of which I have no idea what she was taking. Plus she took this whole diet thing in which she would boil these mushrooms, in which she would do whole sorts of, there's so many things she would do.
Okay, so she was engaging in holistic practices.
Holistic and religious and spiritual practice, that's correct.
Okay. You said that Megan had gotten diagnosed with Lyme disease as a teen.
That was her initial diagnosis, that's correct, and she had exacerbations. Like I had told you before, the diagnosis...
My question was a yes or no question. Let me ask my next question.
Well, allow me to elaborate.
My question was a yes or no question.
That's fine. Thank you, ma'am.
After she was diagnosed, or you were told she was diagnosed with Lyme disease, how long was it before she experienced symptoms?
Which time?
The first time.
I didn't know her when she initially got diagnosed with Lyme. She initially got diagnosed the first time when I was in 2011 and went through exacerbations, up and down cycles, all depending on her condition of her health, condition of her physically, condition of her mentally, condition of her stress-wise, condition of her emotionally.
And did she get diagnosed with Lyme disease as a teen or in 2011?
Like I explained before, I guess you want to say the jury is out of whether or not you have Lyme disease or Lyme exacerbations coming back and forth.
Okay.
You got diagnosed initially.
I don't have any other questions.
Allow me to finish, ma'am.
I don't have any other questions about that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Prior to the day of the deaths, had Megan been suffering?
Most definitely.
When was the most recent time that she had been suffering?
Like I told you, I woke up that morning. All of a sudden, she was pain-free. The night before, I had worked on her. I had worked on her continuously every day for over a year after she weaned from Zoe. Before she went to bed, when she woke up in the morning, to help with her pain so that we can get her to the regular doctors. She had a doctor's visit scheduled for the Thursday after Thanksgiving. Forgive me, I do not have the date, in which she canceled because she had said, there's no hope. There's nothing more that can be done.
Okay. So what kind of work did you do for Megan?
Did myofascial release, craniosacral, any type of relaxations that... My apologies, ma'am. Manual therapy in which I was trained under. Different things I would go to school for, or continuing ed for, to help treat her. Stuff I've read about, stuff I've gone through, everything within my scope of practice.
I'm asking you what you specifically did. So if you were going to treat her,
Yep.
what were the different things that you did?
That's what I'm trying to explain to you. Okay? There's no cookbook recipe in physical therapy. It's treating her ailments and treating her pains.
Okay,
So
so you
whether
did
or not Her liver was inflamed. I did myofascial release to help release the liver. She had digestive problems. I would do integrated manual therapy to help with those digestive problems. She had neck pain. I helped with her neck pain. She had relaxation issues and stress issues and heart rate issues and vagus nerve issues. I would help her desensitize that through craniosacral therapy. I would do anything she needed to get done to help her get better, to help her progress in her life.
For a large section of the cross-examination, the prosecutor would question Anthony about his whereabouts on the night that he alleges his wife murdered the children. Anthony claims that that evening he had driven to a condo that they owned, only a few minutes' drive away from the family house. It was at this location that he had intended to collect some personal belongings for the family, but prior to entering the condo, he had sat in his car to charge his phone. It was late in the evening, he says, and he was very tired. And because the car wasn't on, he didn't realize this at the time, but his phone never charged, and he fell asleep in the front seat of the vehicle. When he had woken up in the morning, he was worried as he knows his wife needs daily physical therapy, and he hadn't been home all night. He anticipated that she would have been expecting some assistance that morning, or even through the night, and describes that he was probably going to be, as he puts it, in the doghouse. It is not explained why, but he leaves the vehicle at the condo, takes his phone that has no charge, and walks back to his family home, only to discover the bodies of his children. It is at this point that the prosecutor begins to question Anthony about the details of how that morning played out.
Why did you go to Zoe's room?
Because she said the kids were dead. And Zoe was my little angel. That's the first one I went to.
So when you get into Zoe's room, what do you see?
There's a pillow on her head. There's a hand. And there's covers on top of her. She's laying on her mattress on the floor. The mattress is on the floor. She's laying on her mattress.
What do you do?
I went over to her. I uncovered her mouth, uncovered her face with a pillow. She had told me that she had stabbed the kids. So of course I looked for blood. I looked for anything. Looked for any sign of life. There was nothing. I turned back to her and I said, I thought you stabbed her. She says, I thought I did. I didn't know. It bounced off of her. I went to the bathroom and picked up a washcloth. Her mouth was open. Her eyes were open. She looked uncomfortable. It's my normal demeanor to help put my kids in rest. Don't ask me why I did it. I was trying to close her eyes. Megan was standing there trying to plead with me to talk. She kept bringing up the story of Thomas, the disbeliever, because she wanted me to believe what she was doing. Brushed her out of the way, and I went to Alex's room.
After you see Alec, do you go downstairs to Tyler?
No, I actually do the same thing with the washcloth. His eyes were open, and his mouth was gently slack, looked uncomfortable. Normal father thing is to relax their head and relax, and I was just providing them comfort.
Okay. So after you do this with Alec, where do you go?
Tyler.
Okay.
I confirmed with Megan that Tyler was downstairs. Once again, brushed her aside as she's trying to convince me to see things in her light. I told her to leave me the hell alone, and I went down the stairs.
Okay.
Megan at that point had gone up to the bedroom already, and I went up there and told her she needed to get help. I don't care what happened. I don't care what she did. Get help. I will take responsibility. I will do whatever it needs. Please go to the hospital. Tell me where the phones are, because I'd asked her for the phones were initially, and she goes, I'm not telling you. I hear a sound that is similar to a balloon, you know, like you rub a balloon, like a... At which point, I poked my head out, as they were coming out, and I see her laying on her back, stabbing herself.
Where at? Is she in the bed? Is she?
She's laying on her back, on her side of the bed, with her head on the pillow, laying on her back, on top of sheets, with the knife in her abdomen.
What'd you do?
I stood there in shock, and I said, what the hell are you doing? And at that point, she says, I'm doing what I did to the boys. I'm trying to get my inferior vena cava.
I'm sorry.
She said, I'm doing what I did to the boys, trying to get my inferior vena cava.
Did you go for help?
I went over to my wife and pleaded for her to tell me where the phones were. She asked me not to leave her. She did not leave the boys.
So my question is, did you go for help? Yes or no?
The answer is no.
After Megan dies, how long, what do you do? What do you do?
Well, we skipped over quite a bit there. I don't know if you want to go through everything or not.
What did you do after Megan died?
What did I do? I yelled out the window to see if anybody was around to help. There was some weird sound coming from her mouth. I thought she was breathing. I started CPR after I wiped her mouth off with that gray pillow.
What do you do the rest of the day? It's the morning. What do you do the rest of the day?
I literally broke down there and cried. Don't ask me how long, because I have no idea how long. I was in a state of confusion. I was in a state of whatever. I couldn't help my wife pass. I felt a failure. I wasn't there the night my kids were died. I felt a failure. I decided that I wanted to be with my family, that I wanted to die, that I deserved to die. I condemned myself to death. I was ashamed.
The final part of his cross-examination, which I would like to highlight, once again relates to the note that I had read earlier. The prosecutor would go on to ask how the note was found and who actually wrote it.
You spoke about the note that was left. You told law enforcement that you printed it after Megan's death.
Correct.
And you testified here today that that wasn't true.
Well, actually, let me correct the facts on that case, please, if you may. The initial note was the one I didn't print out. The note I found in my pocket after, which is the note Meg printed out, that I found in my pocket after I urinated myself in the garage after one hallucination and drank what I thought was coffee, but I'm pretty sure it was motor oil. I went into the house, stripping, and found the note in my pocket.
Which note?
The note Megan had left.
What was on that note?
On that note was essentially, I didn't read this note, but from what I recall, it said we did it to the family, which she referred to as family lineage. I had a different relationship, a different definition of family. And the other thing was where she wanted her ashes. At the bottom of that note, it said, "Tony, I love you forever. Please forgive me."
What did you do with it?
What did I do with that?
Yeah.
I took it out of my urine-soaked pants and retyped it because I wanted my residual family, or my leftover, the family that was alive, to keep the knowledge that we were a family unit, and I wanted my wife to know, I want my wife's wishes known where she wanted the ashes buried. She wanted to be buried with her father, where we released the ashes at Harkness.
You printed it out
That's correct.
and you left it on the green chair.
Actually, I gave it to my mother, who was sitting in the green chair, for her to read.
Your mother was there?
Oh, my mother was there, my father-in-law that died in 2002, my aunt that died in 2013. Quite a few people were there.
Okay. Your testimony here today is that Megan did it.
My testimony today is the fact that Megan killed her kids and killed herself.
Okay.
The jury would not rule in favor of Anthony, and they found him guilty on all counts. During sentencing, Anthony would have a chance to address the judge.
He's welcome to stand.
This was a personal catastrophe in everybody's life in my family, including myself. I maintain my innocence. I provided for my wife, did everything I could for my wife. She was progressively sick over the years. The Friday before all this happened, we got in a disagreement, and I begged her to go get help because she screamed at my son because he didn't do the pot, clean the pot. He let it soak per my instructions. This has been a progressive history since the miscarriage, her anger issues, her frustration issues, and it was directed mostly at me. And I took it. It's okay, because she held me partly responsible for getting her sick initially because I insisted she went to the hospital. I told her after she finally decided to schedule a doctor's appointment on the Thursday after Thanksgiving, she canceled it. I found that out the night before. When she screamed at Tyler, the Friday the 13th, I told her that she has to the end of the month to see a doctor because she went to the alternative and spiritual and all this other route. Or I would get her aunt and my sister involved. After that, she once again held it quiet in public. Okay? She was very good at keeping it from the public. We went to the recital that they did for the convalescent home on the 13th. I was walking on eggshells. I don't like upsetting my wife. My wife was primary and foremost in my life, especially after she got sick. I went up to her one night and said, listen, I haven't treated you in a couple days. Just allow me to treat you. Allow me to work on you. And I tried a couple different techniques. As I was working, she was worried about me not loving her anymore. And I told her, no, the footprints, remember the footprints poem? Sometimes you don't think I'm there, but I'm the one carrying you. I will do whatever you need to get ready. That's why I've supported you. She knew I didn't believe in this light and this other religion that she went into. But I supported her, because that's what a husband does. Everybody has a freedom to choose their own religions. Everybody has a freedom to choose their own acts. She fell asleep, very rested comfortably. I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs. Okay?
Judge Carson doesn't have the authority to overturn the judgment.
No, I understand, but I need to let him know that everything was okay when she woke up the next morning. I kept the kids out there to keep outside to keep her nice and stress-free. That's the only reason I left to go to the condo that night, because everything was good and there was an opportunity to get things done. I went to charge the phone, and I fell asleep. I woke up afraid to be on eggshells or the doghouse again because we just reconciled. I ran back because I could not get the car started. It turns out my seat was too far back. And after that, everything happened. And I lived nothing but a nightmare. Every single suicide attempt, every single nightmare would come out. I relived every nightmare, would wake up and would see, I was like, oh, that's a nightmare. Would see my family dead.
This is not helping you from this progress on, so I encourage you to.
I'm sorry. I love my wife. I love my kids. They were first and foremost in my life. I did not do this. I provided for my wife, provided for my kids, did everything I could. I loved my kids. I love my kids every day. It's only recently that I just stopped crying myself to sleep. My kids and my wife were everything to me. They were the center of my universe. When I came home, I was shattered. I appreciate you listening to me, sir, and I know you're in your situation. I did not do this. Thank you for listening to me, sir.
Any additional witness or testimony?
No, sir, Judge Carson.
Thank you. A jury has unanimously determined, after listening to the evidence presented, that you, Anthony John Todt, are a destroyer of worlds, that you destroyed the world of your 4-year-old daughter, Zoe Elizabeth Todt, that you destroyed the world of your 10-year-old son, Tyler John Todt, that you destroyed the world of your 13-year-old son, Alexander John Todt, that you destroyed the world of your wife, Megan Denise Todt. The jury has unanimously determined that you murdered each of them with premeditation based on the evidence presented in this room. As to count 1, first-degree murder of Zoe Elizabeth Todt, you were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the premeditated murder of your son, Alexander John Todt, you are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the premeditated murder of your son, Tyler John Todt, you are sentenced to life in prison. For the premeditated murder of your wife, Megan Denise Todt, you are sentenced to life in prison. Now, one of those lives was less valuable than the others. Those sentences will be imposed consecutively. You will be adjudicated guilty as to each count. For the murder of the family dog, you are adjudicated guilty and sentenced to the maximum sentence consecutive, which is 1 year in the county jail. You will get credit for any time that you have already served. That will conclude the trial and sentencing process. The state of Florida versus Anthony John Todt has concluded.
I'd like to make a note that at this point of the video, I have transitioned away from research and court testimony, and now speak from personal thoughts and opinions. And what a strong opinion I have on this one, hey. Not for a second do I believe that his wife committed these crimes, and I do have many reasons for why I think that. The only bit of meaningful credibility that supports Anthony's story, in my opinion, is the medical examiner's findings not lining up with his initial confession of how the boys died. This information could, and was argued, that this was his lack of knowledge of how they actually passed, as he tried to take the blame whilst in a delusional state of mind. But just as he uses his broken state of mind to argue that he didn't know what he was saying in that interview, I can also use it here to put forward the idea, if his word of not sound mind is to be believed, then why should one believe his version of events at all? Surely it would be safe to assume that many people facing the charges he faced may say whatever they needed to say on the stand to clear their name. So the goal of the jury is to unearth what they deem to be the truth, and an unprompted confession a few days after being arrested seems to hold way more credibility than a man's testimony who has had 2 years to think everything over. So yes, he possibly could have been out of his mind that day during the interview, so out of his mind that he in fact did think he stabbed them before they had died. The non-functional state of mind argument goes both ways, and it really raises more questions than it answers. In saying that though, I do understand why he took this route, as really, this is the only way to explain away the confession, should he ever have had a chance of a not guilty verdict. Anthony's sister says that she believes he may have done this because he was fearful that he'd be taken to prison, and he didn't want his sons to live the trauma that he had to live, watching his father be taken away. This could be the case, but I do think it runs much deeper than just that. So now I'll focus in on Anthony's personality. The old narcissistic traits and tendencies are seriously present in this man. I'll play a few clips in a moment that will demonstrate why I believe he has these traits. The clips coming up will highlight how he responds to the state's prosecutor when she interrupts his narratives with her objections, and it also shows how he tries to dominate her during cross-examination questioning. It seems to me as though he locks into a psychological challenge with her, one where in his mind, the rules dictate that somehow dominating her will prove his innocence.
Her eyes were, at one point, the color of the most fluorescent yellow highlighter you ever seen in your life. I swear her eyes could...
Mr. Todt?
Yes, okay? In which to come in, help bring the kids to school, which is something my wife...
What I'm going to ask you to do is to try and I'll try and correct you so that we don't have long extensions, so it's easier for everyone to understand what we're talking about.
I apologize, sir. It's been 2 years since I've been able to tell my story. I appreciate you working with you. The way I was raised in a military family. My stepfather was a very proud military man. I was taught respect.
Unresponsive.
Repeat your question, Mr.
The
Ward.
question that was asked was, let me ask an entirely different question so we're no confusion. I want to make sure I tie up some loose ends.
I wanted her to have a good life, period. And I wanted her to get help. I didn't care.
Objection, non-responsive, and narrative.
In the crime scene photographs that were shown to the jury, there was a Huffy bicycle in a box.
Yeah.
And were you prepared to assemble that bike?
Oh, God, my babies. That was to be a Christmas present to my daughter. I hadn't picked up the boys' bikes yet because the boys were some of my best friends, and I could never say. I went over there that night to,
Ask your next question, Mr. Wesley.
Did you open the box? Did you assemble the bike?
I never made it there to assemble the bike. That's where I went that night, to assemble that bike.
You indicated that she initially was Catholic with you and that she sought other religious alternatives.
Well,
When did she do that?
Let me correct your chronology if I may. She came back and got confirmed because we were going to get married in a Catholic church. She was not a practicing Catholic at the time, except for going here and there and practicing Easter. Okay? When she got her yoga certification, she got introduced to this new gallery through one of the things. That was in...
When?
That was in 2009. After she got sick in 2011, she progressed 2012, 2013 to gallery and Mirabai. Like I said, I yell out the front window of our bedroom for anybody. Help, 202, please. I don't know where the phones are. I hear some kind of weird breathing, some kind of weird air exchange, something. No heartbeat. They never went over that in CPR class. But you know what? I was trying anything. So I started CPR, chest compressions. And when I didn't see her breathing, I would do mouth compressions. I didn't care about the blood. I didn't care about all that.
Were the doors to the library open or closed?
Don't know. Didn't see him.
Is the library not close to the stairs?
The library is past the stairs, that's correct. But when you have to pee, you have to pee.
Well, you're standing at the bottom of the stairs looking up at Megan at the stairs. You can't see the doors to the library?
Ma'am, can you see that gentleman back there?
Mike, you don't ask me questions, I ask you questions. Can you see the door to the library when you're standing at the stairs looking up at Megan?
No.
You told law enforcement that you were afraid he was gonna get away, right?
That's what Meg told me, yes.
That's not my question. You told law enforcement
Oh, yeah, on
multiple
the video.
times that Tyler was fast and he was...
You saw the video, and you saw the video also of saying I said things that have been proven incorrect.
That's not responsive to my question.
Actually, it is, but...
Yes or no?
You didn't say yes or no, ma'am.
Yes or no?
Thank you.
Did you tell law enforcement that you had to kill Tyler quickly because he was the fastest?
That's what I told you, law enforcement. That is correct.
And you also told law enforcement, yes or no, that Megan had to stand on the other side of the door just in case.
That's what the video showed.
His view of himself, I speculate, to be skewed and unrealistic. He seems to believe that he is coming across as a sympathetic character, a man who the jury have already decided is innocent. How could they not? He is telling the most heart-wrenching story. In his eyes, it appears that in the jury's eyes, he is the undisputed victim, an intelligent man who desperately wants to tell his story, and he keeps getting interrupted by this irritating prosecutor and her nuisance-like crusade to smear his name. He thinks that he is being perceived as a victim by the jury, a victim who is being disrespected by questions. Therefore, his irritated challenge is understandable. To me, this seems like a constructed persona of a man who has incorrectly read his surroundings. The problem he faces is that the technique he uses to psychologically dominate many other scenarios is not going to work here. He takes the approach of stringing long words very quickly together, delivering intense eye contact, and adopting two otherwise convincing demeanors, a gentle, damaged victim, and a fierce, defensive lion, both of them toting long, drawn-out, nonsensical sentences and explanations. By using these techniques, he is approaching a highly emotional problem with his logical mind. By showing the jury who he wants them to see, he is not coming across as what one would expect him to be, which is a grieving father and husband, and the result is that he looks like an imbecile trying to wiggle out of the heat. I imagine that the world has been his playground for most of his adult life. This is shown by his willingness to commit serious fraud for personal gain. Now, sitting on the stand, he faces yet another challenge which needs to be overcome using manipulation. Unfortunately for him, this situation is unlike any other. In other instances, where one may be able to psychologically brute force their way through, that just won't work on the stand. All control is stripped from him, then legally given to the prosecutor. She doesn't have to play his game. She doesn't have to answer his questions. He is absolutely forced to play hers, and as a result, this conflict plays out. He wants to show the jury that he is nothing more than a victim, but he also doesn't want this woman to get the better of him, to make him look like a fool, on the most important day of his life. He clashes with her at every turn, and in doing so he exposes the cracks. Sometimes he smiles when he thinks he corners her, and other times he shakes his head when he thinks that she is not playing by the rules. Legal rules that she has studied for years to be in this position, to ask these questions. But somehow, he seems to think he knows better than her. As the pressure mounts, there's even one point where he refers to his wife as the Megan.
So are you in the master bathroom?
That's correct.
And where's Megan?
You know, she's somewhere behind me.
So you don't know?
She's talking within voice distance. I can't tell if she's this distance away or she's this distance away.
Is she in the bathroom?
Like I said, I can't tell. You're asking me specific. She's in the room someplace.
So if you don't know, your answer is I don't know. Do you know if Megan's in the bathroom?
I do not know if the Megan's in the bathroom.
Okay.
Benefit of the doubt will allow for this to be a simple slip of the tongue whilst under immense psychological pressure. Yet my stomach did lock up the first time I heard this. This is his wife that he is talking about, someone he says to be his soulmate, a woman whom he is devastated to have lost from his life. Yet in this moment, a tiny slip of the tongue reveals that she is the Meg. This is a nitpick on my part, I am aware, but it stood out to me as it seems so very robotic. Like somewhere deep down in his psyche, this is how he views her. And under the pressure of cross-examination, he was unable to maintain the facade which shields the world from realizing that he's nothing more than a hollow droid of insecurity, one that can only see people as mere objects, pawns for him to control around a life-sized chessboard. And at this very given time, he did not know if the Megan piece was in the bathroom. It strikes me as baffling that when on the stand, he would say on one hand that he would do anything to protect his wife and her name, yet here he is throwing her and her legacy under the bus so callously. And I can understand why he would throw her under the bus. By his words, she killed his children. But then, why would he maintain the image that he is deeply in love with her, as though she didn't commit these acts? So on the other hand, I can also understand if he is still deeply in love with her, as he states he is in letters sent to his biological father, letters that explains that she committed the murders, but he still loves her. And if that's the case, then why is he throwing her under the bus like this? I can also wrap my head around the fact that this could be one of the most complicated situations for a person to emotionally process. Having one's children ripped from their life by the very person that they love deeply. So quite possibly, I am not accustomed to seeing this complexity play out in this way. Or, possibly, something doesn't add up emotionally, because none of those three scenarios I just described seem to be occurring here. I've been going over this problem for days now, trying to sort through what it may be, and what I've landed on is that whenever he speaks about his wife, there is no love in his voice like he claims is in his heart. Watch this set of clips and pay attention to how he speaks about his wife.
We got a babysitter in which you want to know the whole truth. I'm telling you the whole truth.
My question, at what point did you not have assisted help? Month
what point?
and year?
After year, let's see, we moved down here in 2014.
So
No, I apologize. Nope. Full-time was after Zoe, so full-time was 2016, she came down here. After that, we had no help because she fired the babysitter that we had.
Okay. Isn't it correct that you would travel during the week up to Connecticut?
That's correct, as long as my wife's issues and my wife's health dictated such. There were times in which I would literally land and I would get a phone call from my son or my wife that things are bad, and I'd hop on the first flight back.
Did that happen often?
It happened quite a bit.
And when you say things were bad, is this mentally, physically, what are you talking about?
All the above, from the miscarriage and bleeding, to the fact of her ripping the shelves off the wall and my boy was scared, to her breaking the dishes, to her not being able to get out of bed. And then as things progressed and I found that my older son was preparing a lot more meals, before I would leave for the couple days I was gone, I would make sure that
Objection, non-responsive.
Ask your next question.
Did you watch numerous videos about going to the afterlife?
I watched numerous videos with my wife about alien and her alien, what's it called? I don't want to call it an infatuation, but she believed in UFOs, aliens. Those are the videos. I've never seen a video about her afterlife.
Were there other phones in the house?
There were other possessions of phones in the house, but Megan hid them and would not tell me where she hid them.
Emotionally, this makes no sense. He's sitting on the fence and trying to paint a picture for the jurors, which puts him in ultimately the best light. He is the victim, the one who lost everything. And he is also such a good person that he is still the loving husband of the person who killed his children. A man who still loves this damaged, troubled, and borderline insane person, long after many might have found it reasonable to have left her. I have watched many videos of fathers who have lost children. If you have been following my channel for a little, you may have even seen some yourself. Vern Landavazo, Rafael Zaldivar, and Malcolm Turner come straight to mind. Having lost everything, these fathers speak about their children, and the one who extinguished their child's lives in a way that commands attention and respect. It does not seem their words are ego or agenda-driven in the slightest, and I am aware that none of these men are on the stand facing murder charges, but still, it doesn't change the fact what these men all share in common is the loss of their children, and it's just not something that I see present in Anthony Todt. Heavy opinion on my part for sure, but Anthony does not seem like a grieving father, not like the others. The final thing that I will focus on in regards to Anthony is the word control. Control is something that comes up a number of times during the trial, and the state's prosecutor says that Anthony is a man who desperately needs control. To highlight this idea, I'll play a clip of the aunt who was mentioned earlier in the video, Kopko. She is speaking about a time where she was having a girls' day out with Megan.
Say we're going out for the day and we're going to get shoes for all the kids and we'll have lunch. But Megan would get called and she goes, "Oh, that's Tony." And I said, "Don't worry about it. We're in the middle of a conversation." 5 minutes later, he would call back again. And she said, "Oh my gosh." And then she would decline. And then he called me over and over just to get a hold of us to see what we were doing, where we were. And I picked up my phone and I said, "Stop harassing us. We're having a girlfriend day. You'll be the first to know if we're having any trouble. You'll be the first one we call." So that we could enjoy our day.
Control over others can be a dangerous thing for one to crave, and I speculate that Anthony here has a hefty dose of needing control. This would make sense, considering his past trauma. If one were to ask me what is the motivator behind these murders, I would actually say that although the financial troubles he faced could have played a part, his image of a wealthy, successful physical therapist collapsing around him, especially in his wife and children's eyes, may have only been the straw which broke the camel's back. My belief is that Megan and her religious views had a lot to do with it. I noticed throughout the trial, whenever he would speak of her spiritual views, he did so in a way that made it look as though he was very understanding and accepting of them, despite him not resonating with them himself. But something that I felt was present when he did this was a layer of animosity coating his words. It's a common thread with narcissistic people that they will often claim to be what they are not. For example, a narcissistic individual may say that they don't care about their birthday, as this makes them look cool and carefree. Yet if one were to forget their birthday, there would be passive-aggressive, or just plain aggressive hell to pay. Here in Anthony's case, he may claim that he is open-minded, accepting, and understanding of his wife's spiritual views, as this is the socially acceptable thing to say. But deep down, as a strict Roman Catholic, I could imagine that his family following his religious beliefs would be something incredibly important to him. As his wife drifted away from the Catholic teachings and more towards Eastern beliefs, resentment would have begun to grow inside of him. To make matters worse, the man had linked his identity with the medical field. If one is to watch his entire testimony and interview, he throws medical terms around like they're going out of fashion. His knowledge of medicine is a huge part of who he is, and he uses medical lingo to display that, to show others around him how intelligent and esteemed he is. It would have been something that made him feel secure, knowing that his wife followed in his footsteps. In his exact footsteps in her medical career. I wouldn't be surprised to learn he even pushed her to do so. So for his wife to turn her back on his religion, then to turn her back on traditional medicine that he links with his identity, it's the ultimate insult. He can't have his wife doing this, running around wild, disrespecting him in this way. What will people think? What will his children think? What if his children start to turn their backs on his beliefs too? What if they don't take him seriously anymore? What if Megan is right, and her new lifestyle and medications assist far better with her health problems? There are so many insecurities that could come from this scenario for the narcissistic male, and none of them end well for him, in his own mind anyway. This I believe to be the motivation for the deaths of the family. Kill the wife, eliminate the problem. But then how to explain this to the kids? How will he ever be able to maintain the image of a perfect family to them? Simple solution. Kill them as well. And might as well throw the dog into the mix and make the whole thing look like some sacrificial, ritualistic, spiritual crossover from a sickly woman that he can make out to be crazy. But then what explains why the man would spend 3 weeks with their decomposing bodies? It is documented that people will at times stay in the same room as a dead body of a loved one. They do this as they come to terms with saying goodbye, or to pay respect to the deceased. And they can do this for days, even weeks. In some cultures, the corpse will be mummified and treated as though they are still alive for months and years to come. Yet I do not think that is what was occurring here. There was no respect here. One could argue that collecting the kids' favourite trinkets and items could be interpreted as such, or, on the other hand, it could be interpreted as a man trying to once again make himself look as good as possible. What occurred in the aftermath is not something that I can rationalise. I do believe his mind collapsed and broke under the pressure, and in doing so, he found himself sleeping in the same room with the 5 dead bodies of loved ones as he tried to figure out his next step. Do I die, or do I go on? The man was a mess, a pustule of damaged mental overgrowth, spewing out nonsense as each day he woke to the smell being a little worse, to their faces a little more decomposed. I do not believe his story in the slightest. Therefore, his behaviour in the aftermath, I view as just more repulsive actions from a repulsive man. You may have guessed it, hey, but he disgusts me, to be frank. And because of that, this will be the last I expend energy thinking about him whilst writing these thoughts down. To end the video, I would like to focus my attention on Megan and the children, as they should be the only ones that people remember of this awful tragedy. Here is a piece of writing that I found online, which I think highlights who they are much better than I could ever write myself. Quote, Megan was raised in Montville, and attended Montville High School, where she was a drum major and played tennis. Following her undergraduate studies, she earned her master's degree in physical therapy from Sacred Heart University. Megan was very interested in leading a health-conscious lifestyle for her and her family, and she promoted the importance of being environmentally responsible in her home and her community. Megan's joy from healthy living brought her closer together with her family. Not only did she enjoy tending to her garden and cooking from scratch with her grandma Gladys and Aunt Cindy using organic, homegrown ingredients, but they would always be joined in the kitchen by Alec, Tyler, and Zoe. Megan always treated others with kindness and patience, and could light up a room with her brilliant smile. Her love of music was pervasive. As a talented singer, flute and piano player, she shared her passion with her children, and was excited about expanding her folk guitar instruction with Tyler. Most of all, Megan's life was defined by the love she held so strongly for her children. Her entire being was encompassed in her motherhood, and she did whatever she could to support her family. Megan will always be remembered as having an exciting zest for life and learning, and for giving her children that same enthusiastic curiosity for the world around them. Alexander J. Todt, Megan's oldest son, was exceptionally bright and gifted in all his pursuits. With striking blue eyes, Alec had a quiet confidence about him. He excelled in his schoolwork, especially English and history. He was an avid reader, and particularly interested in World War I and military history. He loved to learn from his great-grandpa Max and Grandpa Bud all about their military experiences. A gifted musician, Alec played the piano and was learning how to play the violin. He loved to play soccer as the goalkeeper and to ride bikes and skateboard with his brother Tyler. Tyler J. Todt was the comedic relief and loved to make everyone laugh and smile. He was quick to joke and play around, but his carefree nature always carried a concern for others. He often wanted to know how he could help someone who needed something. Like his brother, Tyler was also intellectually gifted and excelled in mathematics. He was an accomplished piano player and was learning folk guitar. A hard-working competitor, Tyler loved to play soccer with his brother, and they went swimming any chance they had. Zoe Todt was full of life and was known to everyone as Princess Zoe. Her beautiful blonde curly hair framed a face that was always laughing and smiling and singing. Zoe loved her time at school and being part of the Montessori Academy of Celebration community. Zoe treasured any moment she got to dance and sing, and she was eager to start her ballet lessons. She also had a musical spirit and wasn't shy about playing her harmonica all around the house. With two older brothers, she naturally developed a strong personality. When Alec and Tyler went head-to-head, she was never shy to put her hands on her hips and tell them authoritatively, "Now, my boys, stop." Her brothers, like everyone in the family, thought the world of Zoe and would do anything in the world to see her happy and smiling. End quote.